This is Dr. Charles Parker, and you're listening to Core Brain Journal. It's a place where I connect both fresh discoveries and interesting different perspectives from advanced mind science with the realities of real people and everyday life down on Main Street. Well, welcome aboard, folks. Dr. Charles Parker here one more time at Core Brain Journal, and today we're going to pull together an admixture of substances and ideas and thoughts regarding how the human being works in its entirety, from brain to body to mind, and how they are all connected. We have as a guest here an incredibly interesting person, Dr. Cynthia Thaik, and she is going to tell us about how the heart is in some ways connected to the brain. Welcome aboard, Cynthia.
Thank you, Chuck. It's my pleasure.
So her book is Your Vibrant Heart, Restoring Health, Strength, and Spirit from the Body's Core. And what a perfect title, because this is what we're all about, is the core of things. And so thank you so much for sharing that book. It's going to be available on the show notes at Core Brain Journal. And let me do a brief intro so you know who we're talking to. So Dr. Thaik is I didn't even prepare to read this, La Canada, Flint Ridge, California. She's a Harvard-trained cardiologist, a functional medicine doctor, holistic practitioner, author of the book we're talking about, Your Vibrant Heart, and she's practiced medicine for over 25 years. And her point is that we're shifting the medical community's current paradigm of symptom and disease-based, but it's disease-biased, model of practice. We're going and changing that paradigm into one that fosters and actively promotes wellness on a positive side, as opposed to pathologizing things and looking for answers of symptoms. I mean, I just added that in there. So she practices in Los Angeles, and she helps replace stress, fear, and anxiety in her patients, and instills a sense of inner calm and peace by educating and inspiring them to take proactive steps toward health and healing. And she comes by it naturally. We'll hear about it in just a moment. So, Cynthia, what would you like to add to that? Where are you now? Are you practicing in LA? And tell us a little more about yourself, please.
Yeah, I practice in both Burbank, California, and Valencia, California. So I have two physical locations. And at both places, I do cardiology, but as I expand more and because the heart is such a integral part of our life and of our health. As I started doing more with lifestyle medicine, nutrition, wellness, and fitness, the patients that I attract have naturally come to me and wanted a broader view of things. And so we've started doing more internal medicine and functional medicine as well. I started off my career, like you said, being very focused, fairly narrow-minded, as is sort of the tradition among Western medicine, right? We're very compartmentalized, we're very specialized. We have our cardiologists, our neurologists, our gastroenterologists, our pulmonologists, and we lose sight of the fact that all these systems are interconnected, really. And I always like to, paint a picture, an image for my patients of a big, oak tree, right? And each of the branches of the oak tree is a subspecialist. And most of traditional medicine works by what I call, containment down, sort of trying to put out the fire, sort of symptom treatment, if you would. So the cardiologist is dealing with the blood pressure, the endocrinologist is dealing with the diabetes, et cetera. But we lose sight of the fact that each of these, branches and sub-branches are ultimately connected to a big tree trunk. Mm-hmm. And the trunk goes down to the roots. And the roots are just, really a few core value, core things that we should always be looking at in all of our patients, whether they present with the neurological symptoms or cardiovascular symptoms or any of the other systems, okay? And it really comes down to nutrition. It comes down to fitness. hydration. It comes down to sleep. And then it comes down to other things that, as physician, we don't always think about, but is intricately related, which is relationships. How's our relationship to ourself? Our self-image. How's our relationship to others? How's our relationship to to the universe and spirit? And I think all those sectors, if you're not looking at that, then you're really not looking at the whole person. And you're not really looking at a whole person's health.
Well, that is so completely true, and I'm going to tell our audience, because I want you to make sure you tell us about this. I know about it because I've read your bio here, but Cynthia comes by this very naturally from the point of view of the way she was raised. So before we get into the application of this thought, let's take you all the way back to your country of origin and your original training back there.
Yes, I was born in Myanmar, Burma, as I like to refer to it. And my mom was a family medicine doctor, and we lived on a second floor of the above the clinic that she worked at. And so at a very young age, I remember always going downstairs and accompanying her and really having just rows of patients coming to see her. But obviously in a third world country like that, we didn't have all the technology. We weren't doing the imaging. We didn't really have any of the pharmacology. But what did I know as a young child, 4, 5, 6? All I knew was that my mom touched them, right? And that's what I saw, that she was able to connect with these individuals and somehow make them be better. And I've come to refer to this now as the hands-on art of healing. But that's what I naturally, intrinsically observed as a child, that she was just able to make things be better. And then fast forward to my American life and my American training, and it's a little bit ironic, but I remember earlier on in my career, almost having a rebellious phase of me where patients will come and ask about Eastern therapy or meditations or acupuncture, and I remember almost very distinctively saying to them, "Oh, but I'm a Western trained doctor. I'm research based, and I don't and I come full circle. I'm almost ashamed to admit it, but there was a time in my career where I said I don't believe in those things, or that's another world. That's not my world." Mm-hmm. But, as life would have it, I think that my destiny sort of crossed paths with my Western career, and through various things. One was just introducing the wellness program in nutrition, but the other one was myself becoming ill and having to regroup and relook at medicine from a standpoint of the patient. That I did go back to my roots and went back to the things that I knew intrinsically to be true, which is that we really, when I say we, the patient, the individual, holds the power to self-healing, right? And whether it was my mother in, very, limited, ability, or physicians here in the States, right? Those of us who are true providers, right, all we're doing is shepherding and hopefully educating and guiding the patient to ultimately find their own healing path. I very much believe that. I very much believe that as practitioners, we don't hold the magic in our hands. We're not, we can claim to be the healer, but truly the patient, the individual, are in and of themselves the healers, and we're the guides to their finding that path.
Well, we're certainly on the same path with that one, because that's what we talk about every day in psychiatry, is exactly the same thing. Because, in fact, I don't even like to say psychiatry. because it's so limiting in its concept of what's actually going on in that participatory process of really training the person to know how to take the responsibility for themselves and then actively practice it, as opposed to being in a relatively passive situation, vertical management. We're the doctor, you're the patient, we're going to give you something. You don't have to work at it. It's just going to occur because we've got this magic. And you're so correct about that. We see it. The magic occurs when the patient takes responsibility for themselves, really asks the question, and becomes a real serious living participant in the healing process. So we're so much on the same path with that. So then how did you take your heart training and begin to apply it in that more functional medicine context is the word I'm looking for?
Yeah. I think it was sort of the natural evolution. I think that as I came to discover the power of nutrition, as I came to discover the power of patients' ownership in terms of, whether exercise, fitness, but more in terms of their mind and their mindset and the ability to, cognitively have choices. I started appreciating more of all those interconnectivity and I came to realize that the way we were treating, we were, addressing health and practicing from a Western standpoint, while it definitely has its value, and I'm not at all on the soapbox to dismiss pharmacology and Western technology, but it needs to be blended. It needs to be, and at the end of the day, we really need to look at root causes, and we need to really understand why is this person in whatever state they're in. Okay, I don't intrinsically buy that just because of your genetics, that they were predestined to have diabetes or coronary disease or anxiety or depression, right? I think that every disease, every presentation has at its core some root cause. From the spiritual side of me, wants to believe that we're all, created whole, right? And that any deviation from that wholeness is a deviation within us, within, something about us, whether it was our energy, whether it's, how our thinking process, whether it's the way we're eating. And so is trying to get that patient back to their core center. And at that center is going to be, optimal health. And there's always a deviation.
Yeah, I think so true. Basically, what you're saying is there is a complexity to the functional medicine side, and it's much more ultimately utilitarian to understand that there's a complexity than to say it's just this. It's just that cholesterol, or whatever, and you start looking at the whole interaction between the mind and the body. Please tell me this now. You are a practicing Buddhist, and I wonder if you use meditation with your clients. Do you actually teach that? Do you actually make that a part of your program as a distinction from strictly Western medicine?
I do, but I in the limited time and space that we have, I don't want to introduce the subject of meditation to the patients. We don't actually sit there and teach them how to meditate. But I step back even further and make it more approachable to the patient, make it more doable for the patient. I think that there's this intrinsic bias that sits in a lot of a patient's mind that, meditation means that you go, sit under the Bodhi tree and, with your legs crossed and you have to either be able to devote an hour to the meditative process or you just don't do it, right? Mm-hmm. But But in reality, when we look and think back to, how the Buddhists or the monks or anyone who truly does know how to be in a meditative state practice, it is about just a state of being, a way of being, right? And it can be, while you're conscious, while we're having a conversation. And so I teach more about mindfulness, about learning how to be present in the moment, trying to be acutely aware of your present situation, of trying to be able to experience your thoughts and your emotions and your bodily sensations and feelings without making any type of judgment on that, and to just have that acceptance and that awareness. And so I teach a lot about having awareness, because I truly believe that it is only with awareness that we are able to make conscious choice. Right? And it's only through choice that we're going to affect behavior and change. And so those are the things that I talk to my patients about. A couple of tools that I will teach them is really learning how to push the pause button, right? And to not be reactionary. I try and have them understand that we live a very automated life, that most of what we do, whether it's picking up that, driving that through that McDonald's drive-through, or spending, all our time in front of our cell phones, right? It's very automated. We're not even really consciously aware of all this, things that we're doing. And so just stopping and becoming aware of your actions, just that little shift can have a huge ripple effect.
Well, I'm so much in agreement with you. One of the things that I've found that it not only helps an individual manage their own inner targets. What are they actually working on? Because with that increased self-awareness, they have a communication with impediments and options, and looking forward to the future in a more positive way. But the additional thing I think that helps is it helps in the communication back onto the Western medical side of what they are experiencing in terms of how they communicate it back with you, the physician. Because if they don't have any idea what they're doing, if they don't know themselves, the communication process from a medical point of view is remarkably hampered. I mean, it's just almost impossible. So we do this in psychiatry all the time. Please go ahead. What were you going to say?
Yes, I think that is so important that a patient learns how to develop intuition, that they really understand the language of their bodies. I think that all too often patients don't know, or they misinterpret, and they often misinterpret in a fear-driven manner, right? And so I think that what you're talking about in terms of communication from the patient to the physician, it first starts with the communication between your own inner guide and yourself, right? And really understanding that every presentation, whether it be a physical manifestation, whether it be a thought manifestation, right? Mm-hmm. It is your body speak. It is the way that inner guide is choosing to speak to you, right? And we have to learn to listen from a place of quiet trust, right? Trusting that our body will not steer us wrong and that it is trying to guide us, right? But it can, I tell my patients that intuition is always very quiet. It comes in a whisper, and it cannot be heard if you're screaming, right? If you and fear and anxiety is a very loud voice, right? And so you have to be able to quiet that voice in order to be able to listen to that intuitive side of you.
I think that's quite right. In fact, I think to just take it one step further, which I know this is what you do, but just by talking to you, I know this about you already, but it's an affirmative voice that you're looking for. The negative is is a separation voice. It's a definitive, reductionistic, not comprehensive voice. Whereas if it's connective, it's more affirmative, more positive, and more effective in the communication process.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I know from what you do, so much of your job is trying to steer down the negativity and switch patients to the affirmative, to the positive, and I very much believe that the energy that we live in really create the manifestation.
Well, you have in your notes here a very interesting thing, and I would guide our listeners to your book. I'm thinking these 6 simple practices for heading off heart disease are very likely in your book. And I'm going to read them, and we're going to go down to number 5. But one of them is live in gratitude. I like the laugh a little. I think the quote there is really good. The Yiddish proverb, what soap is to the body, laughter is to the soul. I mean, that would definitely help with any kind of cardiomyopathy. Love yourself and others. Fill your life with joy. And this is what we're talking about is number 5 is connect with your inner self. And that if you take that honest look at who you are inside and listen to your inner voice, you're going to be able to communicate more effectively, not only with you yourself in terms of what your mission is with yourself in your recovery process, but in your communication process with any of the medical people who are taking care of you. Or I shouldn't say that, who are with you in the healing process. Let me reframe that. And then the final thing in that list, the 6th one, is appreciate the moment. And I think you were saying this as you gave your introductory remarks, because you're saying we can't be stuck in the past, we can't be stuck in the future. You really have to find out where you are now and have some connection with the moment. As soon as you do, then you have possibilities arise, whereas if you're in the past, they say this in recovery, in addiction medicine. I worked in addiction medicine for a long time. I don't do it, as much as I used to, but, there was a saying in Alcoholics Anonymous, if you're, if you've got one foot in the past and one foot in the future, you're whizzing on the present. And I think that was a very, colloquial way of looking at it. They don't talk that way at Harvard, probably. So that would take us to the next level. Please tell us your thoughts about, because we are Core Brain Journal, your thoughts about the heart things that you do, which are, regarding cardiomyopathy and cardiac challenges with brain. And what are your thoughts about how those issues are connected?
Yeah. So there's a huge heart-brain connection, as I know and your listeners. The simple thinking, right, is that the brain controls everything, and so there's the neuron connectivity, and there's the brain signals that addresses the heart and tells the heart, what the heart rate should be and the blood pressure and so forth. But research has found, and a lot of this research, comes through Heart Math and others, centers like it, that there is as much of a neural connectivity from the heart back to the brain. And that if, and then there's the debate, right? I mean, we have the organs of the brain and the heart. But when we talk about the mind, which is a more nebulous, somewhat spiritual connection. Where does our mind reside, right? Does it reside in the brain? Does it reside in the heart? And you and I probably can debate this, but myself being a heart person, right? I like to think of my mind, the sort of the spiritual center as existing within the heart, and certainly from a research standpoint, we know that when we are heart centered, when we turn our attention and our focus, and particularly when we radiate those affirmative emotions of love and joy and compassion, that there are feedback loops that go to the brain to regulate all of our neurotransmitters and the serotonins and so forth, and so a very a good treatment for anxiety or depression or any of the neuropathic issues cognitive issues that may be going on is to really learn how to be heart center and be heart focused. And when you do that, we find that both from a hemodynamic standpoint as well as a neurotransmitter standpoint, that there's a lot of positive benefits that result.
So true. One of the things as you're talking about it, we wouldn't have any arguments at all. I can tell you that because I agree with you. I came to the whole neuroscience thing through the cognitive door because one of the things I became interested in '96 was attention deficit disorder because it was such a complete mess. And then we began finding pharmacologic answers for it. But then the reason I got into a more functional medicine side of psychiatry is that even with the best trainers in the world, I would not get it right with the person in the office if I didn't really start to think about these somatic contributions and the heart contributions, if you will, the emotional side of who they were as a person. And then the biomedical aspect that was completely beneath the surface, even regarding the thinking process. I found that I was treating thinking without thinking about thinking. And that was a problem. And, bring that up often. But the heart part of it, who you are as a real person, then will take you into your future life. Otherwise, you don't know who you are. You can't communicate who you are. And any help you would be requesting from anybody in the medical community is going to be inadequate because you're not going to communicate effectively where you want to go, what you want to do, and what your needs are, and how you can participate in the process.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
So the next question was, tell us a little bit about your book. What would be an important part of your book that would be to bring some hope, some ideas, some direction for those who do suffer with heart issues that I know I'm hesitating even asking you the question because it's almost too large a question. But, if you could take a little shot at some of those things for our audience, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So, first the title, right? Your vibrant heart. And again, that's the affirmative, right? Exactly what you spoke of. And so here I am, a cardiologist. I started off writing this book with the initial intention of writing about heart disease and how my patients can transform heart disease, right? Mm-hmm. But as I started doing the research and quite honestly, if I could say, even though I'm the author of this book, I really want to say that the words and the messages came through me. And I know that for a fact because, I'm not a writer, and that book was written in under a year. And as I look at it and I look at the content of it, I'm very proud of it. For how it formulated, but I don't claim credit for it because I really feel like this was a message that was meant to be delivered to whoever picks up the book. Mm-hmm. And the book is about your vibrant heart, right? Of again recognizing that at the core, intrinsically, that is what each and every one of us is meant to have. Right? We have a vibrant heart. And that is our true nature. That is our core nature, right? And any deviation from that is a deviation. It is not your natural state. And so if individuals can recognize that their natural state is a vibrant heart, and all they have to do is almost get out of the way and let the regression to the mean go back to what is intrinsically supposed to be, right? And so in my book, one chapter is devoted to heart disease, right? And the rest of the book is on how to put yourself into a physical state to have a healthy physical heart, whether it's from nutrition, fitness, looking at body toxins and detoxification, whether it's from a mind perspective, in terms of how we view things, our cognitive insight into our heart health, and that huge spiritual piece. I think that so all too often, religion is the taboo word, and we're not supposed to introduce religion into schools or into medical practices and so forth. And first of all, I want to say this isn't about religion, okay? But to deny that we all have a spiritual side to us, and that our spirit guides us in our approaches to life, and that health and healing has to incorporate and be, connected to that side, is so vital and so important. And I'm gonna, I want to admit to you that for a better part of my life, even though I was born in Burma and we were raised Buddhist and had that very spiritual connection, right? I wasn't truly living from that space, and it is with that discovery and going back to that space and opening my office and my medical practice to that, and not being, not thinking that it wasn't okay to have those conversations with patients and ask them, how's your life, and do you feel connected? Do you feel fulfilled? Are you living from a purposeful life? It shifted, it shifted my life, my outlook on life, and it shifted how I practice medicine.
Well, when you made that shift, let me just interrupt you for a second, because I'm imagining being in your office with you. And I'm thinking about the shift that would take place with that, because what you're doing is appreciating their deeper level of self-responsibility, because the spiritual winds up connecting you with the larger order, the universal order of things, and their life's mission, where they're going, who they are, as opposed to being metaphorically dead, not knowing who they are, not having an awareness of the significance of and the importance of their relationships. And I think it would be healing just to have a great conversation like that with a physician taking care of you, because it's so much more profound, it's so much deeper. And obviously you're not preaching. You're just saying this is part of our practice. It's going to be a benefit for you. So long distance high five on that. It's very, sorry for interrupting you, but so
thank you.
Please go ahead and say anything else you'd like about your book, if you would, please.
I would like for people to pick up that book with an intention, right? I speak a lot about intention, about that it is our intention that guides us, right? And so anyone who is going to pick up this book, I hope that their intention is of self-discovery, of recognizing and rediscovering the truth about themselves and who they really are, right? Mm-hmm. And not letting a particular illness, like a heart attack or a cancer or a life situation, a job or their financial status define them, because that's not who they are. That's not the truth about them.
It's so true, because if it does, they are developmentally arrested by the very nature of that overwhelm. They're stuck. Yes. And when you're stuck, you're not healing. You're stuck. Stuckness isn't healing, because you're actually not growing. You're dead in the water. And in a way, your heart is developmentally arrested in the context of that living experience. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this question now, because now I'm putting my medical hat. I'm going to go Western on you real quickly here, because I'm curious about it. We're both in functional medicine in a certain respect. I think of myself as more comprehensive, because there's such a polarity sometimes over on functional medicine, where people say, well, we don't do anything traditional. I was so pleased to hear you say, look, we do the whole thing. You're really talking about the the complexity and inclusiveness of medical practice. But the issue is back to the Western thought. Do you have specific things in there about diet and exercise? You said something about that.
Yes, and so I have a whole chapter on nutrition, the importance of eating whole food, recognizing that phytonutrients and our vitamins and minerals are important to us. Eating the full color spectrum. We talk about physical fitness, both from the standpoint of an athlete and what an athlete's at risk for versus the general population. The importance of just standing and just a movement, and also about team sports. We talk a lot about detoxification. I think that the field of medicine has really evolved, and particularly the hotbed is nutrition and nutrigenomics, and understanding that our nutrition, particularly as it relates to our gut health, and the microbiome and all the little critters that sits within our bodies really play a critical role, and so understanding and appreciating that that giving your body a chance to cleanse and to detoxify is so vitally important. I use the car analogy a lot. I mean, how for most of us, right, we put in the 91 octane as opposed to the 87 octane. We go to the mechanic every 5,000 miles and get our oil changed and our filter replaced, right? Mm-hmm. And why do we do that? Because we want to preserve our car for 10 years, right? Yeah. But yet, when we think about preserving our bodies for 80, 90 years, how often are we changing the oil, right? And we don't have an option to replace the filter, our liver, our spleen, our lymphatic system. That's our filter. But, every so often we do need to, clean out the lint and vacuum the filter. And that's really what a good, alkaline cleanse and anti-inflammatory cleanse is all about. And so I think that all of those things are part and parcel of health.
Well, let me take a moment. We just, by the way, interviewed Dr. Joe Pizzorno. You would be interested to know. He was a guest on, and he was talking about the Toxin Solution, his recent book, which is right in line with what you're talking about. But let me ask you this question, because some of these things I don't know about, because you're more on the functional medicine side than I am because of the type of practice you have, which is a more somatic practice. What is an alkaline cleanse? What happens with that?
Yeah, so I don't want to mislead your audience. I think that we throw around the word detox and cleanse a lot, and some of those detox and cleanses are very product driven, and that's really not what I'm about, right? Mm-hmm. But if we talk about just a pure dietary cleanse, whether we call it an alkaline cleanse, whether we call it anti-inflammatory cleanse, whether we call it a whole food cleanse, whether we call it a autoimmune cleanse, we're really talking, for all intent and purpose, the same thing, right? Okay. We're talking about recognizing that there are certain foods that we might not necessarily be allergic to, but we have an intolerance to. Mm-hmm. That these food, for whatever reason, maybe because of the pesticides and herbicides on it, or because of the way that it's been genetically modified, or because our own body intrinsically have an issue with it, or because it wasn't digested properly and now it's gotten in through our leaky gut and is now in our blood system as a foreign nidus, right? That is caused a reaction within our body, a systemic inflammation, right? Mm-hmm. And so when we think about those foods that are more likely to do that versus the foods that are of the richer in phytonutrients, antioxidants, and so forth, we can break it down into many different ways of just inflammatory, not inflammatory, but acid-base balance is another way to take a look at these. And so if you think about the pH scale, and we sit to the a little bit to the alkaline side, food that are very acidic in nature are things like dairy, processed food, sugar, caffeine, but specifically coffee as opposed to tea, alcohol, the animal protein and fat. And then on the alkaline side are the particularly the green leafy vegetables, but anything in dense colors, green tea, certain oils, certain nuts. And so and we know from disease processes that everything, be it respiratory condition, cardiovascular, the malignancies, all those disease processes and all those cellular damages and destruction occur in people who are in the acidic side of things. And so if you want to kill cancer cells, just get your body into an alkaline state. And so if patients truly understood how the disease processes work, I think shifting your body into an alkaline state, whether you do it with alkalinized water, whether you do it with antioxidants, green leafy vegetables, tea, etc., that shift to the alkaline state and the avoidance of the things that causes an acidic state will take our body into a healthier state. Okay, and those same things that are acidic versus alkaline are how the inflammatory and anti-inflammatory also splits up, and so everything really aligns with each other.
That is so interesting. I didn't really know that, and I appreciate you bringing that to our attention because I'm a non-recovering coffee person. And it would be a good thing for me to become more alkaline. I've been talking to my wife about it, but I didn't know that's what the message was. I didn't know that's what I really needed to do. So in closing, we do have to wind up. I've so much enjoyed this conversation. It's really too little time because you have so many interesting things to talk about. Let's end by just rekindling the fact that we're going to have that book giveaway. Your Vibrant Heart is going to be available for a while, and we'll close it after about 2 weeks on the website. So if you want to register for a drawing on that, please do that on the website at Core Brain Journal. And then please tell us as we wind up, Cynthia, where we can reach you if somebody wanted to say, hey, let's get on this and get something done so I can change my life.
Absolutely. I think the best way to connect with me and learn more about me is just through my website, which is drcynthia.com, so drcynthia.com, and there's a message box there. They can also get to me via email at info@drcynthia.com. I really enjoy, connecting with patients, with listeners. For me, I feel like I am on a little bit of a mission, to spread the message, to really empower patients to take ownership and recognize that they can do something about their health, that they don't need to be stuck in the conventional world. And I'm very happy to say that there are more and more of like-minded people like us, whether we're in the space of, psychiatry and neurocognitive biology or cardiovascular or GI, that there are functional doctors coming up in each of these spaces, right? And in fact, next month, I'm going to be hosting the first evolutionary medicine, functional medicine meetup group in the Los Angeles area. And so I'm really proud of that. And I think the more that we can get not just patients, but practitioners aware that there's this growing community of like-minded people out there that's, really intending on serving people.
So well said. One of the things is, as you were talking, and I was thinking about how much I was agreeing with you as you were talking about it, and hey, I'd like to pop out to LA and join you for the party. But one of the things that I think is true for practitioners who are listening is that taking this extra step to think about these things more deeply actually is a much more satisfying way to practice medicine. It's so much more connected, and really connected with the true mission of why you became a physician, nurse practitioner, PA. On any level, when you're rendering care and you're really more connected with the elemental essentials of the human being you're working with, I just think it's so much more fun. I mean, you just can't get bored, and what happens is so much more satisfying. So,
absolutely. I mean, before I started this journey, I was very close to being burnt out. Unhappy with my life, with my practice, overstressed, overworked, and now it truly is a joy. I mean, I come to my office each and every day, looking forward to the day, and it's all about the connectivity, right? This way of practicing allows you to connect at a deeper level with the individual people that you're serving, and it's only through that connectivity that we can bring joy into our lives.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. Well said. As we're winding up, Cynthia, thank you so much for being on. We appreciate it, and perhaps we could do this again sometime. We'll talk a little more about whatever your choice of topics, because you're right on the mission, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much, Chuck.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Core Brain Journal. We're working every day behind the scenes to bring you reports that connect research benches with those street trenches. Here we share the complexity of mind science because, as you know, details really do matter. One of the most pervasive, misunderstood challenges is how commonplace medications, like those written for ADHD, are used so regularly without clear guidelines. If you think you'd like more specifics, take a minute to download my 2-page PDF packed with video links and references on the absolute essentials of how to start ADHD medications. They're easily available at corebrainjournal.com/start. Thanks for listening. Do connect and stay tuned. Together we can make a difference.